I don't know where I'm going, but I sure know where I've been.
You and I have known each other for a while and stuff, but before I do an interview, I like to just kind of get in the headspace of the person that I'm chatting to. And I delved into your catalogue and your career, and I just went down a rabbit hole.
It took you a long time.
And I was getting myself so excited. I'm such a geek. And I was like, I never knew that you played with that person. You did this and the guitars and just everything. I mean, you've had such an incredible career. I mean, how has it been for you?
Long. It's been a long time, and I play with a lot of great people, and I've been lucky enough to work with, really great musicians, but who are also great people.
Yeah.
And that kind of stays with you, no matter if you're 21 or whatever. And I think if you treat people the way you want to be treated, that kind of thing, stays with you. And I think it's just one of those nice things that you get to play with some of your heroes, and you get to be hanging out all the time with these guys through a period when you're as famous yourself, but you don't really realize it. And it was a fantastic time. Whitesnake was an incredible journey, and that's a long, long time ago when I was in the band. Obviously, my association has been continued because of, contributing some songs to the current lineup or the subsequent lineups, I should say.
So obviously you were in a few bands to start off with when you were really young, and then the kind of biggish break for you was you were in UFO first of all, weren't you?
My first break as a pro was UFO, and that was in the early 70s. We never recorded. We did some demos, and it was my first pro gig, and I thought it was all going to be like watching a Beatles movie, and it wasn't really like that. We didn't really hit it off as people, but the music was fun, and I went from being a well-known name in North Bucks to being a well-known name in Northern Europe, and that's what being in a pro band or wanting to make a career break was all about. Then I joined a band called Wild Turkey, which if that had been my first band, everything would have been hunky-dory, but it wasn't. But then we did some good stuff. That was the guy from Jethro Tull in that band, Glenn Cornick, the late Glenn Cornick. During those times, I played some gigs with a band called Bedlam, and Cozy Powell was the drummer in that band. And he then formed his own band, and he rang me up to say, I want you to play guitar. So no pressure there, him being an ex-Jeff Beck player. So, but that was good. That got me into the studio and working with Mickey Most from this, who was a real big name in the 70s. And I got doing a lot of session work and stuff. And, into that, from there, Cozy recommended me to be in John Lord and Ian Pace's new band. I was in a group called Babe Ruth at the time, and they were looking for a guitar player. And I didn't think I had any position to go into because I was never really a Deep Purple fan. But what I didn't know when I went to the audition was that was exactly what they were looking for, somebody who didn't really play like anybody in Deep Purple. So I got the gig by default, really.
So how close were you to joining Wings?
Well, I had two.
You chose Whitesnake over Wings, didn't you?
Well, Whitesnake started during the end of Pace Ashton Lord and my possible involvement with Wings, because a great musician called Howie Casey was working with the Pace Ashton Lord project, and he was also the saxophone player with Wings. Mm-hmm. And Paul wanted another guitar player because my old friend Jimmy McCulloch, the late Jimmy, had left the band, and Paul wanted another guitar player but didn't really want to go through loads of auditions apparently. And Howie said, I think I have just the guy for you. So that went into a phone call, then a meeting at his office, not with him, but with his managers.
Yeah.
Then another meeting. And it was like, oh, what's happening? And he said, oh, no, it's going to be great. We're going to have a play together. Don't think of it as an audition, just having a play, see how you guys get along. So, but in order to get along, we have to play. Then another week went by and another week went by. And by that time, I bumped into David Coverdale in London. And he said he was in town to put a band together. And that band became Whitesnake. So then I had to call up the McCartney office and say, thank you for considering me, but now you have to unconsider me because I'm putting a band together with a guy from Deep Purple. And they were not awfully happy. But history and has proved me to do the right thing, I think.
Exactly. So let's talk about your acoustic guitar that's on your lap. So how long has this one been with you?
About 10 years, this one. I've got a couple of these. This is an old Gibson J45, which is the kind of the country guitar, really. These ones that Hank Williams and people like that used all the time. But they're just great acoustic guitars, really. And I've got a few old ones, and I've got some newer ones and stuff around.
So did you learn on acoustic?
I started off an acoustic guitar, not as good as this one. It was vastly inferior to this one, but it made me play enough, and I learned to play along with, I think it was a Coronation Street theme or something. And I said to my mum and dad, they said, "Oh, you can play that then?" And I said, yeah, I'm really good, you know. And they said, "Yeah, you're quite good." And I immediately said, "Can I have an electric guitar?" So that was about 12 or 13 by then.
So you taught yourself? You taught yourself?
Yeah. Taught myself from playing records and watching people on TV, and because there was no other way. I mean, there were not where I grew up was a very rural area, and even if you'd have wanted a teacher, you wouldn't have been able to find one. So it was a matter of teaching both. Pardon?
That's incredible. I'm always, envious of you guys, or that teach yourself. I mean, I guess that's a natural. You're obviously born to play guitar. I think if you can teach yourself, I don't think I could have ever taught myself just by ear for sure.
Well, I suppose you have to have a natural ear, and some ability helps, I guess. Yeah. But it was a matter of working it out, listening to records and saying, well, this sounds good, and this sounds a bit like the record, or this sounds nothing like it, but it's better than the guy who I saw play it down the road last week. It was a bit of like fooling people most of the time.
So what's that guitar book that everyone had back in the day? And it was like Learn to Play Guitar in a Day or something like that.
The great late Mr. Burt Weedon. And it said, "Play guitar in a day." And
did you get that?
I never had that book. I went to a lunch in his honor once, and Billy Connolly was there, and he stood up and he said, he was speaking at the dinner. He stood up and said, "Burt Weedon, you owe me money." And everybody, there was a big freeze in the room, one of those kind of gulpy moments. And he said, "I bought your book." He said, and I could not play the day after. It was really funny. It was really funny. But that Burt Weedon book was very influential. But I never, maybe I couldn't afford it at the time. It was probably, the price of a set of strings or something, So by that time I was probably playing a few chords and going, sort of like that, and thinking I was really good and working out. I mean, watching other people, really. I used to go and see people in the pubs and look through windows and see where the guy was putting his hands on the guitar and stuff. But I'm not unlike anybody else from my generation. That's the way we all learn to play.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's an incredible way. It's a way to learn to play. So who was the guitarist then that made you pick up the guitar?
I suppose initially it would be Hank Marvin with the Shadows. The Shadows was the only group really that you saw on television, guys playing guitars up front. And then came along the Beatles, and that gave you a chance to say, "Oh, I want to do that. I'd like to do that." And when they opened themselves up to say, "Yes, and we also write our own songs and we kind of do what we like," that was kind of the anarchy side of it. And I could then say to my folks, "Well, when I leave school, I'm going to play the guitar," which was greeted with great laughter, not by my folks, but by most of the people around me. And till to this day, with people I went to school with, and they still say, "Are you still playing the guitar?" And I go, "Yeah, a little bit, But that's how it began, watching people on Thank You Lucky Stars and Sunday Night at the London Palladium, stuff like that, and thinking, yeah, I'd like to do that.
Obviously, you learned on acoustic, and then you went to electric. How did the blues come into this for you?
I had a guy in my family who lived in Liverpool, and he was in a band, which impressed me anyway. He was a singer, and he played harmonica in a band. And so because of the fact that he was in Liverpool at that time, that was impressive enough. Then the fact that he was in a band was quite big, quite mega, really. And he came back to the countryside where he grew up before moving to Liverpool. And I wanted to impress him so much that I could play something by the Shadows or something by the Searchers.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and kind of grimly went, "See, oh, you can play all right." I said, "But that music is not very good." And I said, "Well, I can play it just like the record." And he said, well, if you can learn that, learn this. And he gave me a Muddy Waters album, and he gave me a Sonny Boy Williamson record. And after that, I discovered Howlin' Wolf. So suddenly he put me into a whole genre of music that I didn't really know much about, but learned to love very quickly. So from then on, I got into the Yardbirds, and that's how I discovered Eric Clapton and John Mayall and Peter Green and Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix. So it wasn't a bad time to be 18 or 19 years old playing the guitar.
Part of that whole British kind of blues explosion that happened, like with the guys that you just mentioned, was the 58 standard Les Paul. Now, why do you think that particular guitar, well, the Brits, why did we kind of take it and kind of take that blues sound with this instrument that were both American and create our own take on it, and then kind of served it back to the Americans?
I think what happened was, and your friend and my friend, and you know very well, Mr. Bonamassa, you know, is the one to ask about that for the technical side of stuff. All I know is that all the guitar players I really looked up to at the time were using Gibson Les Paul standards. So that was the thing, but they were like the princely sum of about £300, which was completely off the scale.
Yeah.
So you had every guitar you wanted to until you could afford one, or almost afford one, and then you'd get, which was second-hand guitars then, because there was no such thing as a new one. They didn't make them at the time. So once you found your Les Paul, you kind of kept it. Keith Richards had a Les Paul before I think anybody else in this country. And Michael Bloomfield was playing one in America, but he realized, I think, that all those great Brit players, they were all using a Les Paul. So he went out and found a Les Paul. And he was one of the great innovators of playing blues, rock blues with that guitar. Eric plugged his into a Marshall amplifier, and nothing was ever the same again, really.
Can you remember the first time you played a Les Paul?
Yeah, I played a Les Paul just before I turned pro, and I couldn't afford it, but I sort of put my hands around it and stuff, and then I did get one when I was in UFO, but it wasn't the ones that I really wanted. It was one I could afford at the time, but it was still an old guitar, but it was a 53 or 54 guitar that had been changed over into a more modern guitar. And it was great. I used that all through UFO. And then Glenn Cornick, the late Glenn Cornick in Wild Turkey, he was a kind of innovative guitar collector in those days. And he was a big influence on me to find out, go out and sort yourself a proper Les Paul. And while you do so, get yourself a Junior and get yourself a Stratocaster and, you know, that kind of thing. And I said, yeah, well, how much do they cost? And I also was fortunate to live in the same building as Mick Ralphs from Bad Company. And he was in Mott the Hoople at the time. And he also was a big guitar collector, and Mott the Hoople toured America a lot in those early days. So he was always coming back with 3, 4, 5 guitars at a time. So it was always came back to like the Gibson Les Paul. So I finally did get one, but the guy found me rather than me looking for it. He tracked me down in when I was in Wild Turkey and said, I think I've got a guitar you should have. And that's the one that's become quite famous.
Which is the Beast.
The Beast, yeah.
The Beast. I do want to see it. I can't believe you got it, because I texted you and said, can you bring the Beast? And I didn't know if you would. Okay. So this is great. Okay.
Let me put this one away, and I'll. You won't hear this one because it's not plugged in, because I can't really plug. So I'm sitting in my kitchen at the moment, and here it is.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's it.
So there's an incredible story with this guitar, isn't there? Because so it was owned. The legend has it was owned by Andy Fraser from Free. Then he bought it from Paul Kossoff, was it? Who apparently bought it from Clapton.
Traded it with Clapton.
Traded it.
Yeah. And that was when Free opened for Blind Faith.
Right. Oh, right. Really? So that was during the Blind Faith. So was this the original one that he played on the Beano album when he was in John May?
No, this one is a 59, and the one he did the Beano with was a 60, and that was stolen. So this would have been a replacement for the one that was stolen that he got. And I have a guy contacted me a few months ago, and with a whole load of information about the guy who sold it to him in the store in London. and he seemed to remember the price and everything. It's quite. So I'm going to put all that together at some point because there's a lot of interest in this guitar, and contrary to what many websites and forums say, I do still have it, as you can see, Kylie. It's still here.
I can see, and it's very beautiful. So what songs have you written on that guitar then? Or do you write on, you probably write on an acoustic?
Here I go again with this guitar.
There we go.
There you go.
Brilliant. Can we hear something?
There you go. I don't know where I'm going, but I sure know where I've been. And so on.
Woo! It's like a gig. We're getting lots of questions. Let me answer these guys because they're. So Bruce says, "Can you remember the first time you heard Eddie Van Halen, and what did you think?"
I can remember the first time. I think it was either Gary Moore or Don Airy who said, "Have you heard this guy?" And I said, "I've heard about him." And they said, no, you don't just hear about him, you have to hear him play. And I just thought it was astonishing. And to me, Eddie Van Halen is the guy in the 80s that Eric Clapton was in the 60s with the Bluesbreaker album, because he changed the whole genre of young players and made them want to play a certain way. I don't play that way because I come from the older school, but there's a whole bunch of, plethora of new players because they play guitar because of Eddie Van Halen. But he's a wonderful guitar player. And I watched him at a gig once at Donington, and Gary was with me, and Gary and I went back years and years together as kids, really. And I said, "Have you ever seen him play live?" And he said, "No, not really." I said, "He's really good." And he went, "Yeah." And Gary knew how good he was. You know what I mean? He wasn't a bad player, Gary. And we stood on the side of the stage, and Eddie was really off the scale, and Gary's face was just dropping. And I said, "It's good, isn't he?" And he said, "I had no idea." He said, that's how good it was. It was fantastic. But he's a great player, he's an innovator. He made people play a certain way, the way that Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix did from my generation. So I'll always have time for people like that. You talk to Joe about that, he crosses over the two. Well, that's a different conversation. This is heavy. Can I put it down?
You can put it down. Yeah, you're going to get bad back.
Okay, folks, goodbye to the beast. There you go.
Bye-bye, Beastie. It was nice to meet you. And Joe's played that, hasn't he? Bonamassa.
Joe plays that more than I do.
Does he? Does he take it on tour with him?
Yeah, I usually take it when he comes over to Europe, and it's much safer with him and his crew than it is with me, to be honest with you. I took it to a Def Leppard Whitesnake show of 3 or 4 years ago, and Joe Elliott came out and said hello because I hadn't seen Joe for a while. And I put the guitar down, and my daughter came up 5 minutes afterwards holding it, saying, "Left in the corridor."
Oh, my God, you Wally.
So it's always a bit, when I get it, I make sure that it goes to the crew guys very quickly because they take really good care of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that was backstage at the gig. I did leave it out the front. So
that would have been
behind
that would have been a faux pas.
I wasn't proud. I did get a bit of a rollicking. So there you go.
You've played Rory Gallagher's Strat. How was it?
Sensational. It was. I was the first person to play it after his passing, and I was very, very honoured. And I was presented by his brother with it on stage, who tapped me on the shoulder between songs, and I got quite emotional. Got a bit of a lump in my throat, and I thought, there's a couple of thousand people here. Keep yourself together and be professional. So don't, be like a blubbering wreck. And I turned around with the guitar, and Donald, Rory's brother, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I think my brother would rather approve of this man playing this guitar." And I looked around, and there were about 800 men crying their eyes out in the room. So it was one of those moments, one of those magical moments.
Did it make a difference, you playing it? Did you feel like your playing was different?
The funny thing was that it hadn't been restrung, it hadn't been cleaned or any. It was just left from the last time he had used it, and the strings were really quite old on it. And I was using a Stratocaster guitar with a brand new set of strings on.
Yeah.
And his guitar was twice as vibrant and alive than the one I was playing, with these old strings on it. It's got its own mojo, and it plays really great. And I'm very honoured to play it. And I think there's still quite a small club of people who've played that guitar since Rory's passing. So I was first, which is good.
Paul Gregory says, how much of Joe's album did you co-write?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what the final running list is going to be. But I think we wrote anything from 7 to 10 songs. But how many of them end up on the album? I know there's at least 4 or 5 on the album. And the last 2 singles he's put out on Spotify, they've been both co-writes. It's a great record. You're going to love it.
I've heard it.
I'm going to say, I bet you've
heard it. He's been sending when Kevin was mixing them. Kevin would send them to Joe, and then Joe would send them on to me. And I guess the one that you wrote together, I was like, that you wrote that one with Bernie, and he was like, yeah. I can't remember which one. Was it Conversation with Alice?
Conversation with Alice, and there's the new one is called Why Does It Take So Long to Say Goodbye, which is a bit of an epic ballad.
Yes, that is the one. I think that's the one that I guess, because it's got the Bernie Marsden ballad touch on it for sure.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 more that people are going to really be into, because he's playing. The whole band are so good. Kevin is fantastic, and doing it all at Abbey Road was just a joy. I'm not playing on it. I sing on a couple of tracks. I sing on one track for sure, which I think will, when that one comes out, that's going to surprise quite a few people. I'm not going to say what it is, but when it comes out, it's a different sort of slant for Joe, and there's some great guitar playing on there, but there's a couple of things on there they might go, oh, didn't expect that kind of thing, And I'm very proud to be working. We've known each other about 10 years, well, more than 10 years now, and he's just a super talent, He works so hard. And the big loss for him at the moment, obviously, nobody's out on the road. And there's nothing more than people want to see than a Joe Bonamassa show, including me, So I look forward to those days, and no doubt that we'll hook up together on one night on a stage somewhere there. But the album's great, and people are going to love it.
No, they will love it. And it is, like you say, it's very, very different. And I like the fact that he feels like he's more in touch with the lyrics that he wrote for this as well. It's a personal album, isn't it? I think, which is
I think
nice.
when we were knocking the tunes together, and we'd come up with this idea for this, and would you want to develop this more? And I might put a different slant on something, because that was why they wanted me to be involved in the writing, and I think it shows a lot on the record. I mean, Pete Brown's involved as well.
Yes.
There's some co-writing.
Those incredible Cream albums, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Jules Holland has written the song for him, which I don't think I've heard that one yet, but I may have only checked out my own stuff. But so there's some good stuff on it, all done in London, and all it's Royalty. It's called, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Royalty.
Yeah, it's a good title. So Bernie, I don't know if you know, I taught myself how to play guitar during lockdown. So obviously finally had some time to just sit still for a bit and learn how to play, which is something I've been dying to do for years, but never had the time. And so I've been playing for about 4 months now. And I know that you have a guitar school, don't you, that you do? It's called Mojo Experience.
Yeah.
What's happening with that?
Well, that's usually done in July, beginning of this month. And that obviously was cancelled this year. It would have been 3. That would have been 3rd year. And it's just called the Guitar Mojo. It's at Stowe School, and it's all very splendid in a beautiful setting. And it's 3 days, and you come on one day if you like, or you come for the whole 3 days and stay overnight. And it's been very well attended, and we doubled up on the first year, the second year, and it looked like we were going to double up again this year until we had to, postpone it until next year. So that's really enjoyable, because you don't have to, people say, oh, I don't think I'm good enough to come to your guitar. It's nothing to do with that. It's if you enjoy your guitar. Chris Buck was with me.
Yeah, he's been on the show, actually, Chris. I had him on. He's a great guitarist.
He's done both shows, me and Jim Kirkpatrick from FM. And we just find the level of the guy who wants to play, the person, and there's been, men, women, boys, girls, or whatever. And you find out where they are and what they want to do. And if they want to play the lick from Guns N' Roses or whatever, well, Chris is the man to show them, or whatever. You know, we don't try and terrify them with how good Chris is or how good I am or how good. It's just a matter of saying, come on, play your guitar, show me what you want from it, and we'll try and enhance your playing. And so far, so good. It's all been very positive. So that hopefully we'll be back in the frame for next year.
Okay, good. I definitely want to come along to.
You'll have to come.
Yeah, that would be great. So obviously, as you've done that, you're obviously quite good at showing people how to play things, teach people. So is there anything that you can show me to give me some advice on my my playing? So I've got a Yamaha.
You know, the main thing about the Mojo is that it's not a teaching thing. It's like, I see what you do, and then we can say, okay, why don't you try it like this, or I can make that a little bit easier for you. And that's what the other guys are really good at. Sometimes people teach themselves stuff. They do it the hard way. Yeah. Go on, play something. Go on, show me.
Oh God, the pressure, Bernie.
No pressure.
Okay. Right. Should I just play anything? I'll just make something up. Should I? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm so embarrassed. You know, I got Joe to do this with me, and I was so embarrassed.
Embarrassment is not the word. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to play the guitar, isn't it?
Oh my God! There's something that I've been learning is this thing as well. What is it? What was it?
There you go. There you go. You got the first chord. Here I go again.
I think my guitar's a bit out of tune as well, but
whatever. You're in a hot country. Don't worry about it. Playing is what you feel, Kylie. You know, you have to put your heart and soul into it, and that comes through your hands. If it's not hurting your fingers, it still should be after 4 months, then you're not doing it right. So if it's still hurting, you're doing the right thing. You know.
Because I found that, so I started on electric basically, and then when I was coming out here, I thought I'm not bringing amps and God knows what else with me, so I'll just bring the acoustic. And I found the acoustic quite hard actually, because it's unforgiving. You like really have to push your fingers down, or it buzzes. And
that's why most people did it the other way. Started off with a really tough acoustic guitar and moved on to a nice electric guitar with a small neck, thinner neck, and easier to put your
once they've done all the hard work. Yeah,
you've done all the hard work. You can do. Plectrum or not, finger pick or not. Just find your way around the fretboard. That's the whole thing, really. That makes it sound kind of easy, but it isn't. It's hard work, and it takes.
It's hard.
And I'm still learning, so you got time yet. Don't worry.
That's the thing, isn't it? I guess the wonderful thing about it is that you're never finished with learning. It's like a thing that continues forever, isn't it?
Absolutely. I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, listen, Bernie, it has been wonderful chatting to you. Take care of yourself, and when Joe gets back over, let's go for dinner again.
Yeah, that was nice last time. That was good. But keep in touch. You look after yourself. Be safe. Thanks, folks, for watching, and take care of yourselves. And just get online. I'm online, BernieMarsden.com.